Dr. Kaba wrote a book, African Spirituality. And this is, of course, why he's also in this session, of why I've asked him and invited him. But also, Dr. Kaba, because you were before this pandemic, we spoke and we had an idea of bringing you over in October or
Yeah,
to talk about the Moors.
yeah. And I was looking forward to that. Of course, we'll just, it's not canceled, it's just postponed. You know,
Exactly.
we'll,
Exactly.
we'll get it, but all things in divine order. And I think that this has really done phenomenal things for all of us, even though it comes in the package. Sometimes you think something comes as a curse, but it's really a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that what I'm observing now is that the world is coming together, and it's unifying itself. There's a lot of changes going on. And when you talk about where do we go from here and what do we have to do, it becomes so important because this is a prime time for us as a people right
For
now.
us as a people, as Black people, everybody.
As all of us worldwide. Remember, my sister Ruth, the subtitle of my visit in 2016 was from Harlem, New York to Harlem, Holland, the ties that bind us. And that was really the conversation that we were focused on, was the ties that bind us.
Yeah.
This is a worldwide thing happening here. I'm getting emails and calls from around the world. Like I say, I've been doing interviews. I did one in France, where that's the one that the brother had to translate for me. And there is changes all around the world amongst us as a people. And it's interesting that George Floyd, the brother that was killed, that was murdered, the policeman had his knee on his neck. To think that the creator and ancestors would use him as the turning point in history. Sometimes we look for these great things to happen. We look for a person to come forward to start something, but here in a small town, unbeknownst to anybody, a young 17-year-old girl was the one that filmed that. That's part that needs to be spoken about. There was a young girl on the corner watching what was going on with our brother George Floyd, and she was taping it.
But she was criticized, right?
Well, certain people criticized her, but all of us appreciate her. She really is the reason why all this is going on, even though his murder is a cornerstone to what happened. If she had not been recording that, we would not know this.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't it that a lot of these things are recorded but not being seen or something? Because I think 2 weeks before you had the jogger, and there are a lot of police incidents here as well. So why is this? Why is it that with the brother George Floyd, is it different? Because it happened before.
You know what I tell my family? This is what I think it was. I tell this to everybody that I come in contact with. What made George Floyd different from Ahmaud Arbery, who we found out about, who was shot by white supremacists in Georgia, Breonna Taylor, sister that was laying in bed in Louisville, Kentucky, and they come busting her house. And then after that came George Floyd. Here's what my own personal thing. The last 2 minutes of his life, this brother called out for mama. What is the word for mama in Dutch?
Mama.
Okay. All around the world, it's almost the same word. Some form of is the sound that comes out when we're calling our mother. I know as a brother, as a human being, I know the times in my life I called out for my mama. You call out for mama when all is hopeless, when you're in pain, when you're scared. Mama is the one that you call for when everything is lost and you just want help. You call for your mama. And I think all around the world, when they heard George Floyd call out for his mama, and then they found out that a couple of days after he died was 2-year anniversary of his mother dying.
Mm.
And that idea of calling for mama, it triggered something in the minds of people because we all know mama. It don't make no difference what culture you are. It make no difference if you a puppy, a cat, a rabbit. We all know the role that mama plays in nurturing and sustaining a child. And as an African, what I experienced was mama came down. Mama came to her baby boy and said, George, I'm taking you with me. I'm taking you back home. You don't deserve to go through this. You already go through your trials and tribulations. So I'm taking you home. This is my own spiritual belief system now speaking. This is Kaba speaking. This is what I think. This is the difference. And I think that when mama came and raptured her son, as that policeman was choking the life out of him, mama made connection with George Floyd. But at the same time, mama also made contact with that policeman that was doing it because his knee was connected to George. And for mother to connect with George, she had to connect to his knee. That policeman, greatest punishment, has yet to come. Even if he go to prison, what George Floyd's mama gonna do to him is gonna be worse than any judge could ever decide. And I think that when you put all of these pieces together, George Floyd changed history. And in that changing of history that went across the world, it was that I believe he was calling for his mama. We all know, I know in my life as a young man, even to this very day when I may call out for my mother in libation, we know what it's like to call for mama. Yeah, we call for daddy. Yeah, we call for daddy. But we call for mama when we're in trouble. And I think that's the difference.
Is this African spirituality you're talking about actually? This is spirituality?
You can't separate it.
It's spirituality. It's just spirituality. This is what the spirit is.
This is what spirit is. This is what, because how could the world be connected like this? There has to be something connecting us. We're miles apart, thousands of miles apart. Yet over a matter of a few days, the world changed. People in London, I mean, what I saw happening in London when they took down those statues and they want to take down Winston Churchill, to want to take out Winston Churchill. What was his name? Admiral Pike or somebody that was involved in enslavement in UK, somebody, they tore his statue down and threw it in the river. That's UK.
Yeah.
And then they had this whole series last night that I was watching on what's happening to African people in UK. George Floyd made that happen because I never heard, I mean, I've been there before, so I know the history and I've spoken to brothers and sisters from UK, but I have never seen it on television where they do an extended version on the problems that Black folk have in UK. It's in our faces now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. What I see happening, or what I saw happening here now after the demonstration, because there were a lot of demonstration here in every city, yeah, right? Sntayehu. But what I see happening now is that the community is now all on the same, the noses are the same direction. This is what I feel now, because before, when I was saying some things about whatever issue, this is And this is also, yeah, has everything to do with what happened um, with
Yeah,
him.
I think if you in terms of acknowledgement, yes, in terms of acknowledgement, all noses are pointing the same direction, meaning that people have less credibility when they say that the problem is non-existent. But like I think when you mean like the nose in this, I think our movements,
Yeah,
just like in the US, also here in Holland,
yeah,
they're
the movement, yeah.
all continuously being hijacked, and even like the criticism that our brother that was protesting and made a speech about kicking blackface
Yeah.
is being
But
criticized. I think, yeah, and that's every part of criticism that it's getting clearer and clearer to distinguish racists in Holland. I think that's the only thing that's really changed, because I don't see a lot of solution-based
no,
activity.
no, there's no solution-based activity, but the energy and the how do you say, Dr. Kaba, the attention is there, right? And before it wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first step in solving a problem is admitting that you have a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And once you see, that goes back to what are we going to do after all this is done, after all of the protest and the marching and all the rest is done? What are we going to do? And remember when I was coming and they were doing that thing about Santa Claus. Remember, you know, when they said what should be done, I said you need to get all of your comedians to do a show and laugh at them, make fun of them, ridicule them, because their purpose is to get you upset. But when you make jokes of them, when you humiliate them, they don't have the effect that they want. And what I have found is when I've done presentations and there's somebody in the audience that wants to, you know, start something, a person of European descent, I'm speaking of, and what I'll do is I'll just start sarcastically criticizing, and I'll start and make the audience laugh. In fact, I was in a film called Race War. And I debated a man by the name of Jared Taylor. He's like the grandfather of white supremacy.
We need that DVD, by the way, but yeah.
Race War, have you heard of it?
I saw the trailer a few years back. However, I didn't get the DVD yet. I didn't know where to get it.
Well, if you go to YouTube, see, when they premiered the film in New York, they had Jared Taylor and myself speak after the film.
Yeah.
And it was like a 2-hour conversation because I told them this is not a debate. Because to have a debate, you have to have two sides, and you don't have a side. But what I attempted to do with him, and what my thing was to first, I wanted to make him feel uncomfortable. Not cuss him out, not yell, not scream, make him uncomfortable. I wanted him to squirm in his seat. The other thing I wanted the audience to laugh at him, to laugh at his ridiculousness, to laugh at how immature and childish he sounded. Because that's what you have to do to them, because they rely on spurring the emotion in us for us to get upset. They live off that like a vampire lives off blood.
Yeah.
They're excited by it. They want to get you angry. But when you come back at them with science, when you come back at them and make the audience laugh at them, you change the whole conversation. And so I feel that those in Holland and the UK and here in the United States, you see, what happened to George Floyd? Every Black person in the world, even in Nigeria, they were protesting.
True. Yeah. A lot of African countries.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody has George Floyd inside of them. Make no difference what language you speak. We all have George Floyd. We all know what that feeling's like. We have lived. That was actual. But how many of us live every day with their knee on our neck?
Yeah.
When we go to work or when we get on the bus. Sister Ruth, you remember the time we went on the train? Your son was there. You were sitting across from me. Your son was sitting next to me, and we were on the train. And remember that European man that got on the train and bumped into me?
And
he bounced off of me because, you know, I was sitting solid. Now, family, this is in Holland, in Amsterdam. Sister Ruth and her son, and there was a sister with you that was sitting next to you. We were sitting across from each other. Your son was next to me. It was you across from us, and there was a sister that was coming to the radio station. And the man come in with his wife. And he came in and sat down, and he sat down too close, and then he looked at me, and then I looked at him. And you said it was interesting, his reaction to me, because he bounced off of me. I ain't moving for you. You want to bounce off me, you know, but I ain't moving for you. And it wasn't done in contempt, or I wasn't being mean. I was just saying, I ain't moving.
You just held your space.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
As a human being. So maybe in his mind, he thought I was supposed to kowtow and move over or whatever, but that wasn't happening with me, because that's not how I think. But the point that I'm making is that this is how they come at us. They come with a sense of privilege. They come with a sense of who they are, and it's so ridiculous because you are not who you think you are. And we as a Black people have to stand our ground. When you talk about solutions, the first solution is to respect yourself, love yourself, and that way others will love and respect you. That's why everything starts from within. That's the first step. I cannot unify myself with my brothers and sisters if I haven't unified with me.
Within yourself.
That's it. So, I can't love my brothers and sisters if I don't love myself.
And if I may, even how we stand like triumphant on George Floyd is the stance that they used to have every time when they beat us down. That even that was the fire also was ignition with everybody also. See how we stand, and the other cops were standing also like him, beside him, like we are winning. See, and that was and that was also one key thing that was also igniting our souls, our spirit. You see, when people saw the thing like that, and even their own people realize how they are standing, and how the real world is for us. That is our world, and that is where we live. They daily have to suffer under their knees. See, even spiritually and physically. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when they did that, what they showed us was you can do nothing because we have the power, and you cannot do anything to us. So it was really showing off dominance.
Yeah, the power, the dominance. Yeah. How great they are.
You know, sometimes I wonder. I mean, what you just said, Dr. Kaba, about when you're walking on the street and they come near you, they want you to move aside. I've been having this conversation with my people here in Holland before, and some people just say, I mean, do you believe that they do this consciously or unconsciously? What's your take on that?
Yeah.
My thing is, much of what they do when it comes to melanated people, Black people, what motivates them is not hate. You know, my background is teaching children. Early childhood, in fact. My first license was in early childhood, 4- and 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. And one of the things I taught children from a very young age is that those who would wish to oppress you don't hate you. They fear you. Their reaction to their fear is what we call hatred. But they really are very insecure, and they suffer from an inferiority complex.
Rational.
You see, when they see this, they see the original human being. And they fear that because they are not that individual. And so they come at you to do all these different things. So the reason why they want you to step off the curb, or the reason why they want you to move over, or the reason why because they want to feel, see, it's all come down to power. As brother was speaking earlier, when that policeman had his knee in George Floyd's neck, and you looked at his face, the look on his face was as if he was gaining strength.
Yes.
Through killing that man. It was like a vampire sucking somebody's blood. I call them energy vampires. And they come at you because they have really an insecurity issue. They suffer from an inferiority complex. And I tell people, the more violent you are, the more fearful you are. Because if you're a real human being with a humane perspective on life, if you're deeply spiritual, you don't have to put someone else down to make yourself feel better. You come to the table with your A game. You on your A game. You doing good. You ain't worried about other people. You know, Usain Bolt, right? When Usain Bolt, the track star from Jamaica. Okay, when that brother get up on, ready to do his race, he ain't worried about his opposition. Because his brother on his A game, he know what he about to do. So you step up to the starting line with your A game. And we have to start thinking like that. When I was a young brother in my neighborhood where I grew up, it was called Amsterdam Projects, by the way, which is interesting. That's when the Dutch were in New York. Called Amsterdam. And Mr. Andrade was our coach. And I remember what he used to always say to us is, when you get to the starting line and you take off, don't ever look around to see where your opposition is. Because the moment you look around to see where your opposition is while you're running, you slow down. He said, you step up to that starting line on your A game and you run your A game. Don't be looking around where your opposition is, because it don't make a difference where they are. And he said, if somebody wins beyond you, it means that they had a better A game than you. Study them, figure out what they did, and next time step up with your A game. I think we spend too much time worrying about them. We spend a lot of time talking about them.
No doubt.
We need, every moment we spend thinking about someone else is a moment that we're not thinking about ourselves. We have to focus on building self now. The first solution is to build yourself.
You know what's been bothering me a few times? I mean, at least for a couple of last year, let's say last year. So every time I meet another Black person, often when we try to find some common bond of brotherhood or whatever, we usually talk about Europeans and how they behave. And it's kind of weird, because I understand that we have something inside us that we must express to show some form of solidarity. However, it's also annoying, a bit vexing when I greet a brother and one of the first things that come up is, do you realize that these white people are looking at us, and etc., things like that. I mean, it's as if we have an obsession with them. At one side, it's understandable. I don't mean to offend nobody, but at the other hand, it's also how can we move forward when we are looking back? Yeah.
And that's a good point, because that's exactly what happens. But haven't we been trained to do that? When you stop and think about our evolution, post 1492, haven't we been forced to make them the center of our world? What is Massa doing?
What is Massa doing? Yeah.
That is, oh, where's Massa? Because, but this has been our psychological framework. From when we were babies, we were born into this. See, because one of the stories that hasn't been told is the fact that many of the Africans that were stolen from Africa and brought to the Americas or to Europe, many of these Africans were children.
Yeah.
Because if we all were together right now, right, and somebody came in, they would kill us. Because you ain't gonna enslave me. I've been free too long.
You're gonna fight back, yeah.
And every chance I get, I'm gonna wait for you to go to sleep, and I'm gonna take care of you. But with children, there's more control. So many of them, many of the Africans, and this is what's not really told in terms of the long range overview story of us as a people, brought to captured and brought somewhere, and what they did is they began to breed those children to have children. And so those children born in the Caribbean, I'm going to use that as an example, Central South America, those children that were born into this enslavement mind. They never knew anything else. Fortunately, there were those that carried the legacy and the traditions to other parts of the world. That's why we were able to keep our African story. Maybe a lot didn't know it, but enough knew it to keep that African DNA in place. You know, most of the Africans that came to the United States did not come directly from Africa. Most of the Africans that came to the United States came via the Caribbean. But we don't know this history because we have the impression that Africans were stolen and then brought to the United States, South Carolina, North Carolina. That's not what happened. They were brought to the Caribbean, they were broken, and then they were sold to the United States.
Transported. That's the major part of the story.
And when you understand that from a child, this is why I love our people unconditionally. I understand why you're doing what you're doing. But let me tell you another story so that you can stop talking about them, because the more you talk about them, the less you talk about you. What are you doing, brother? Where are you, sister? What are you doing? I don't care about them. I know them. What about you? What you gonna do? What's your plan?
What are we doing? What are we gonna do?
That's the key. And so even with this protest, you know, I understand a lot of people are very happy that white folk are now stepping up to do what they're supposed to do, but they should have done that 400 years ago.
For real.
You know, I mean, I mean, better late than never, but my God, man, come on, you know? So they're doing what they're supposed to do. Malcolm X. One time a young student came up to Malcolm X when he was doing a presentation, and she said, "Mr. X, I'm white. I'm not a bad person. I'm so sorry that happened to your people. Is there anything I can do to help?" And he looked at her real cold and said, "No."
I remember the story.
Years later, Malcolm looked back on that and he said, "If I could tell that young girl what she should do, I would tell her there is something she can do. She can go back and talk to her people." Because the problem, see, black folk don't have a problem. We have our own little situation as human beings, but black folk don't have a problem. Europeans have a problem. Black folk problem is the fact that Europeans have a problem. But we don't have a problem. We be just as happy doing our thing the way we do it and how we do it with our flavor, you know, doing what we do. So we don't have really a problem. We have human situations like all humans do. But the European people really do have a mental problem.
Might I add the Arabs as well?
Hey, listen. Well, they're two sides of the same hide. They're closer to the See, to me, to be an Arab, you have to be an African. Because when you understand the history of Islam, you understand certain things about Bilal.
Yeah.
And you understand that Islam came from the mountains of Ethiopia. That's where it came from. And it was brought into Saudi Arabia because the west coast of Saudi Arabia, particularly around Yemen and the Horn of Africa, they were related. The kingdom of Saba. They were related.
That's true.
And so Saudi Arabia is really part of the African continent. That's where African people were. The Eurasians you're talking about are a people that are going to come down at a much later date, like about 2000 BC. We're dealing with the real history of what's going on. These Eurasians then come in with these Africans that are living in this area. They're conquerors, they're warriors. And what they do is that they usurp this faith system known as a way of peace, which is Islam. And all of a sudden, we think they're the ones that started it. In fact, I don't even call them Arabs. I call them Afrabs. Because to be an Arab, you've got to be African.
Yeah.
And the language that we call Arabic came from a brother known as Antara, Antara. He was the one that set up the grammar and syntax for the language that we call Arabic. He was a poet. He was an African poet from Ethiopia.
Okay, so for context, right? For context, you're talking about the original Arabs.
Yes. Yes. When you look up, like today we call it Israel. But the day before it was called Palestine. But the day before that it was called Canaan. It was a black land. And the black people were known as the Natufians.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The Natufians were the original Africans in this place. And that's why I say, when it comes to our brothers and sisters who are Palestinian, I remind them, I say, look, I understand what you're going through, and I have feelings for what you're going through, but your ancestors did to Africans what the Israelis are doing to you. At one point in history, the ancestors of the Palestinians are the Philistines. You know that story about David and Goliath and all that?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. Well, the original Palestinians were the Philistines who murdered the African Natufians or the Canaanites. So this is a history that we have to understand. And also, we have to keep in mind, it's these Eurasians who practiced Islam who also came in and began to develop the first process of barbaric enslavement of African people on the east coast of Africa.
Yeah.
And it was their wearing away at Africans on the east coast that made the European slave trade even easier.
Okay,
because
so
Africa had been attacked since the 700s by Eurasians practicing Islam. So Africa had been at war with outside forces for a while. So
okay, so I have a question about that, because a friend of I just got a question from a friend of mine, and she's asking, when did the trans-Saharan slave trade start? When did it start and where? That's her question.
The sub-Saharan, you mean?
No, the trans-Saharan. Okay, it's also known as the Arab slave trade. So when did that start, and in what land?
You have to go way before Islam. Islam is a religion created or comes to the world arena as we know it somewhere in the 600s, the early 600s. But that's not where the problem started. you have those same Eurasians before their descendants embraced Islam. You have their descendants, the Assyrians, the Persians, who have already collapsed the African kingdoms of Mesopotamia and Elam, Media. These are ancient African civilizations long before Eurasians are here, long before Islam. To give you a date, I'm talking 2000 BC.
Yeah. Okay.
See, when we get into history, you start breaking stuff down. Religions become prominent at a later date. You're dealing with the people. It was Cambyses in 525, an Assyrian, that attacked Egypt in 525. And from that point on, Africa has never truly ruled Kemet or Egypt again.